Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm do something a little different tonight. I'm expecting a couple people to join me, but I'm going to get started because I like to start on time. So, first thing I want to share is my usual screen. This is how I like to start. I think everybody sees it. All right, so this is the Ankh Mira. Right? I'd like to say hotel family, and I welcome all comments, questions, comments, or corrections. If you see something that you find interesting, please like, share, and subscribe. All right, so as I said, I'm going to do something very, I'm going to do something very different, like have the screen go black every now and then. But what I'm going to do this evening is I'm going to show a video that is not my video, but it has some information that I think we should all be should appreciate. Put it that way. All right, so let's get started. So first of all, here's some images of well, let me just say the title of this particular stream is African People Wrote About Life After Life. Right? I don't didn't know a better way to write that because what we will see is that in the tombs, the deceased, as we would think of them, um, goes into another life. So there is a life for our, at least our ancestors, so that there being a life after this life. And we also know that they were the first to embalm the deceased body and preserve it using wrappings, which we call mummification. And we'll see some of how that works. But again, this is, thousands of years ago, our ancestors were already performing these rituals, again, that we call mummification. And in that process, their objective was to meet Osiris. Osiris is understood to be the Netcher who whose realm is uh, the Duat, or what we might call the afterlife. And to meet Usir or Osiris, okay, there's two ways of writing his name. I usually write WSR for Usir, but he's going to be called Osiris in the video because that's the name that people like to use. And then we also have, again, to meet Osiris, you have to go through this process where your heart, which we can see on the left side of the scale, is weighed against the feather of Ma'at, which is on the right side of the scale. And I did a previous video about Ma'at, representing truth, balance, order, um, and justice. And this is recorded by Impu, or uh, Jehudi, not Impu, I'm sorry, recorded by Jehudi. And we have Impu sitting, kneeling at the weighing. And then we have this creature that's there in case your heart doesn't balance with the feather of truth. So that's the judgment scene. And again, I'm not going to talk a lot about the judgment scene. I'm actually going to talk about what happens after someone gets through this process and their heart is as light as a feather. And that person, well, okay, before I say that, so this idea is an idea that when the Greeks came into Egypt, they accepted this idea. because they had no better idea, or probably not any idea at all. And it's also true of the Romans. So we see that when the Greek Macedonians entered into Kemet, they adopted the same theology that the people who had been there for thousands of years had. Came across this image, and it comes up in the. We're going to be going through a tomb, and this is a blue lotus. Uh, this is the Nubian blue lotus flower, and the lotus flower is a symbol of the upper regions of the Nile Valley, or as we would say, up south region. And that comes up during the video, and I just want to point that out before we get into the video. So this is some previews of what's in the video coming up. Okay, let's see. There's a couple other things I want to show previews. So inside the video, we will be looking at this couple. Let's make this bigger. Okay. This couple goes into the afterlife, or the next life, together. It's a man and his wife, I dare say, or his female companion. But he's the one who really is going through the process. And what we can see is him. We could see him, and I could try to show his name. Hold on a second. I want to be able to see his name. So let's remove me from the screen. Okay, try this. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so so the objective of my course is to read the Mdw Ntr. It's going to be a little challenging because I don't have a pointer that I can point at each of the symbols, so you have to bear with me. So we're reading from right to left, and the way I know that is we see the birds' faces, and in the first column on the right, like the columns are divided by these red lines, so as opposed to periods and commas. We have these red lines that will indicate the beginning. So at the very top of the first column, we have the mouth, and below that we have the conical loaf of bread, which is represents the concept of to give. And there's a man that's standing, so we know this man is giving, and the three little strokes right above that symbol, which is the hat, a crown. That symbol is the letter N. So we have the man giving a lot of things, or at least multiple things, and he's giving them to the Ntr, because there's three symbols of Ntr. So it's Ntr root. Right? So in those three symbols together, that's three symbols for Ntr. And below that, we have the seated Ntr. We know that's a Ntr because he has a beard that's curved, and he's seated. And then we go to the next column, we also see plural strokes, and we see the Neb, lords, so multiple lords. And then this is the Uchik. And how do I know that? It has the long legs, right? That's typical of the Uchik. And below that, we have the plural strokes. So that's Nebu, U, and then we have this 5-pointed star. The 5-pointed star is Duat, right? Duat, and below that, we have the Egyptian falcon, Egyptian eagle, which is the symbol. So this is Duat. And then the T in the third column, that's the T. So we have the symbol of the 5-pointed star by itself is Duat, but we have the A and the T following that, so I know that's Duat. And then the rectangle, which has the opening in the bottom, is a house. So we're talking about Duat, which is a place. That is the place for the afterlife. That is the Duat. Then we have the reed leaf, and then we have the hat again, right? And this is the red crown of Lower Egypt. Uh, and it's just another way of writing the letter N. So this is reed leaf is I, the hat red crown is N. So this is in, and this is, we have the I, the seat of Aset, and the deity behind that, and the deity behind that. So those three together, that's always Usir. Right? So, so we have, again, just going back to the first column, we have the man giving to the Netchers, right? And this is, again, the Lords, and this is U, and this Duat, and the Netchers of the Duat, and again, the house of the Duat, and this is in Usir, or probably more like where Usir is. Moving to the fourth column, okay, it took me a while to figure this out. That's an ear, right? And that horizontal looks like a sideward U. That's the symbol for N, or M, I'm sorry, M. So that's actually Sennedjem, which kind of means to hear, the ear, Sennedjem. And this is the arm and the hand. And I can't really say what that's below that. I want to say it's a ripple of water. Not sure, but that would be on. And this is the owl, which is M. So I'm not quite sure how to translate that. But I know in the fifth column, we have the seat of Aset, and we have the loaf of bread below that. So we know that this is Aset, and below that is her house. And below that, we have the goddess Ma'at. We see the Nekyeret, and we see the feather on her head with the Ag. So we have Aset, the house of Ma'at. And then finally, and starting with the, so it's interesting because they have black lines that separate the last two columns, and that is the name of the deceased person. And they're calling him Sinem, what are they calling him? They're calling him Sennedjem, right? So the ripple of water, okay, so below the hand and arm and hand, that can't be a ripple of water. Take it back, because the ripple of water does look like a ripple of water. And below the ripple of water is actually a pea pod, which is transliterated NDJ, Nedjem. And again, we have the owl below that, so that gives me the Nedjem. And I can't really see what, oh, that's the owl's legs below that. So his name is Nedjem. The symbol in front of that, that looks like something straight with two arms coming out. I've not been able to find that symbol at all, so I'm not quite sure. But I know that the ripple water, the pea pod, and the owl, that's Nedjem. So probably the symbol in front of that by itself could be Nedjem. Below that, we have the book roll, which tells me that in this case, this is the idea of this man. And again, the last column, we see the man seated. This man is seated, and he has a flail in his hand, and he has a long vertical line behind him, and a vertical horizontal line below him. This man is a noble man. That's what all that means. So we're about to look in the temple, I'm sorry, in the tomb of this noble man. And at this point, he is actually deceased, which is interesting because obviously his eyes are open, his arms raised. So even though he's deceased, he is alive. We also see him, and this is, again, I'm going to do the whole video, so we'll see some more commentary about this from another point of view. I'm trying to give you some heads up information. But in here, what we can see is the first symbol, of course, is the falcon-headed Ntr, which is Heru, and the sun above his head with the snake wrapped around it, cobra, that's Ra Harakti. That tells us his name is Ra Harakti. And behind that, this is Sennedjem, and he is now green because he is now rising with the sun. And again, a lot of the text describes that. And again, I'm not going to go through all this text right now. So let's just get rid of this. I meant to get rid of this ticker. Okay. All right. Enough said. So off we go to the video. Before I present of the media. All right, let's do that. So I'm going to remove this, remove that. All right. All right, so don't know who's here. Can't really tell. Interesting. Okay. But I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to put this on and I'm going to make it large. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to play.
Today I'm going to take you to a 3,300-year-old tomb. It's not that of a pharaoh, a prince or a queen, but that of a simple mason craftsman who, like kings, wanted to access eternal life. Sennedjem lived in the village of Deir el-Medina under the reign of the pharaohs Seti I and the very early years of Ramses II. In my previous video, I told you in detail about it, where the craftsmen who built the tombs and funerary temples of the pharaohs lived. I have taken my references from the osirisnet.net website, which studies the tombs in ancient Egypt. You will find much more detail there than I can give you here. Sennedjem was called Servant in the Place of Truth, the Place of Truth being the village of craftsmen. His tomb was opened on February 1st, 1886 by the French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero. The tomb was untouched. The paintings have their original colours, and the burial chamber was filled with coffins, mummies, and objects from the funeral furniture. Most of these objects are now on display in the museums of Cairo, New York, and Berlin. Sennedjem's tomb can be considered a collective, as at least 3 generations of the same family were found there. 20 bodies had been lying there for more than 3 millennia. 9 of them had very beautiful coffins, the other 11 did not. They were probably less fortunate family members to whom the head of the family had offered to share his tomb. The coffins are now on display at the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization in the Fustat district of Cairo. It is probably thanks to his marriage with Nefertiti, daughter of a rich family of notables, that this simple mason could afford a burial and objects this splendid. In 2019, the coffins were opened, the linens and strips removed, and the wonderfully well-preserved Sennedjem mummy appeared. Sennedjem and his family house are opposite their tomb at the southwest corner of the village. Here we are about to enter into the TT1 tomb. It's the tomb of Sennedjem, although for some unknown reason the name of Sennedjem is written on the entrance. The burial chamber was originally closed by a door made of sycamore wood painted yellow. It's not there anymore, and to see it you have to go to the museum in Cairo.
So the door was stolen and moved to a museum. Interesting.
I'm showing you a reconstruction of the vault entrance from the inside. The door is decorated with a scene that I wanted to show you. Sennedjem and his wife are seen in front of a board game that looks very much like chess. It is actually a game that appeared at the time of the pyramids called Senet, which could be the ancestor of backgammon. If you're tempted, you can find it on the internet. Here the stakes are of paramount importance, since it is his solar destiny that Sennedjem is playing for. The texts on the door and the walls of the corridor all refer to chapter 17 of the Book of the Dead. We will quickly pass the entrance hall because the paintings are not in very good condition and the walls are lined by dusty glass. There are, however, three of interest. On the west wall, the sun sets between two lions. The god depicted is perhaps Rauti, who I've never heard of before. On the east wall, the day will soon rise, and it is still necessary to prevent the serpent Apophis from capsizing the solar boat. This is what the cat, representing Ra, or a companion of Ra, does. On the ceiling, we see Sennedjem entering the tomb from the outside. He shows his adoration to the goddess Nut, materialized by her breasts and two arms. She provides sunlight to Sennedjem, a light that will allow him to continue living between the earth and the sky. And here we are at the door of the funeral chamber. It measures exactly 5.12 meters long and 2.61 meters wide, with a vaulted ceiling of 2.4 meters at maximum height. The north-south orientation is only 3 degrees off, and the side walls are located to the east and the west. The paintings are made with the palette of the time, which includes the 6 fundamental colors: white lime, black smoke, red and yellow ochre, blue lapis lazuli, and turquoise. The background is yellow, which was a privilege granted by the king to have walls painted in gold coloring representing the flesh of the gods. The color is normally reserved for the royalty. The decoration is designed as a Nubian domed coffin. The vault has panels or boxes separated by longitudinal and transverse bands. These bands are reminiscent of those with protective text that surround the body of a mummy or its coffin. Here too, the paintings are protected by glass, which distorts a little the visual experience, and especially the rendering of the photos and videos. The 2.60 meter width of the vault does not help either. That's why I will often use images that are not mine. All the texts and scenes depicted in the tomb are from the Book of the Dead. I will start with the south wall, divided in two by the opening of the corridor. In chapters 144 to 147 of the Book of the Dead, it is said that 21 gates, all guarded by armed genii with knives, will close the entrance to the kingdom.
So just point out that the south wall is facing Nubia. It's facing south, which is what we identify as Nubia. Or, what's the other two names for it? Punt, and now currently it's Sudan.
Kingdom of Osiris. Generally, only 10 are represented, probably due to lack of space. Sennedjem and Nefertiti will have to pass the first test by giving the names of each door and its guard. The same formula is repeated in front of each of the 21 gates of the House of Osiris. Sennedjem is surrounded by 4 columns of text proclaiming allegiance to Osiris. In it,
So here's what I mean. He's physically in another world and apparently alive, uh, based on these images. So it's a life after life, which is why I titled that. Also, looking at the text in front of the female, if you look right below her, let's see, if you look right below her elbow, uh, that's actually a symbol of Aset. So she's actually praising Aset in Osiris, but he's trying.
Nefertiti's prayer is also addressed to Osiris. Let's now look at the lower register. We will examine it along the entire length of the south wall because it is a unique scene showing the participation in the funeral banquet. On the east side, the descendants of Sennedjem and the collateral lineage, more or less close to the entrance according to the kinship. They come from the world of the living, bringing their offerings. The names are written in the text above. The four seated figures are three sons of Sennedjem and the daughter-in-law. Two little girls stand under the second and fourth seats. Behind these seated hosts stand six men, a woman and a girl. They bring in gifts of natural products and gifts from the Nile. The girl who finishes the parade is not named. On the west side are the ascendants, placed here because they are supposed to be dead before the previous ones. Seated participants are all represented in their ceremonial costumes. The beginning of the scene is near the entrance. A servant places the ointment, represented by a cone, on the head of Sennedjem's eldest son, accompanied by his two wives. Scented cones are often represented on paintings and bas-reliefs of the time. It was assumed that they were made of a mixture of oils, resins and fats, and melted under the effect of heat, thus diffusing the fragrance. But only two real ones have been found in the tomb of Amarna. Most Egyptologists doubt that they have been used in real life. In the middle, another Rama represents a wind-blown veil symbolizing the breath of life before the faces of Tiro and his wife Taya.
So, doing a little research, the symbols on the head are actually pink lotus of Nubia also. And of course, if you look in the female's head, you see the pink lotus of Nubia, and you see the blue lotus of Nubia also right under that pink lotus. So these are, they would not find them because the lotus would not survive.
With the other hand, he makes a libation of water by means of the Nemset vase. Finally, the main couple are shown larger. Before them stands one of their sons, draped with the panther skin of the priest Sem. From his right hand, he pours water on offerings. Two children stand under the seats, a boy, Ranaru, and a girl, Hetapu. Above the banquet is a funeral scene which occupies the whole upper register. It's probably a reproduction of a ceremony that was held in the courtyard of the chapel before the burial. The head of the coffin is facing west, the realm of the dead. He is kept awake by two kites representing the two sister goddesses, Isis and Nephthys. Isis is at the foot, and among her functions recalled by the text, she is Great Divine Mother. Nephthys, who has the power to transfuse the vital fluid, is at the head and proclaims, "I come to protect Osiris, the servant in the place of truth, Sennedjem." His assimilation to the great god appears complete. This scene is inseparable from that of the revival of the mummy by Anubis, which is located opposite on the north wall. These two scenes are complementary because the god and the two goddesses act together to bring Osiris Sennedjem back to life. Anubis, by his magic, warms the heart of the mummy, which starts beating again. During the actual ceremony, the priest wears a Khanid head mask, playing the role of the god. All around is inscribed the long text of chapter 1 of the Book of the Dead, which asks for the exit on the day after the burial. Due to lack of space, the scribe could not write the whole chapter, which stops in the middle of a sentence. The rest of the north wall is about the presentation of Sennedjem to Osiris, guided by Anubis. 3 sections can be distinguished, each of which is approximately equal in size. It starts at the northeast corner. It shows Sennedjem after he passed the test of weighing the heart. The left hand folded over the right shoulder corresponds either to a gesture of fear or a gesture of respect, or both. His right hand is held by Anubis, who assumes his dual role as protector and the opener of the paths to the afterlife. Above the 2 characters, 22 columns of text say that Anubis introduces the deceased to the gods of the Duat without having to fear that the doors close before him. The Duat symbolizes the stay in the afterlife of the soul of the deceased, waiting for it to rise again at the same time as the sun. Let's now look at the second section. Sennedjem is sitting on a mat, on his left heel, right knee raised. It corresponds to the Egyptian way of representing the crossed-leg position. Above him, a green mat supports 2 lettuces between 3 wine amphoras, closed by a clay stopper and decorated with a blue lotus. In front of Sennedjem is a huge piled-up table of offerings. Bread, cakes, baskets of figs and grapes, beef shank, game, onions, lettuce, with assortment of herbs on top. Above the offerings, Sennedjem recites chapter 125 of the Book of the Dead, which contains the Declaration of Innocence. Thus, the deceased can separate himself from his faults, purifying himself. At this time, it is very important to have led a life in accordance with Ma'at, otherwise no destiny in the afterlife is possible. Finally, let's look at Sennedjem's wig. It is now streaked with white strands, a sign of time that has passed or intense fear. We don't really know what it means. In the last section, we see Osiris in a beautiful coloured kiosk, which stands out against the white background. The roof is supported by 4 columns, but only 2 are shown. They imitate sheaves of papyrus stems tied at the top by red and white ribbons. Their composite capital overlays the 4 flowers that symbolize the 4 great regions of the kingdom. The papyrus of Lower Egypt, framed by 2 oyari with a solar disk, the Upper Egyptian lily, the blue lotus of the Aswan cataract, and the pink lotus of Nubia. In the kiosk, Osiris is standing, which is quite rare, on a blue matte sign surrounded by yellow. The rest is consistent with his normal representation. On both sides of his Atef crown, 2 Ujet eyes symbolize the god revived. On the floor of the pavilion, you can see 2 strange objects that I can't remember seeing before. Egyptologists call them Inuit fetish, which consists of a vase from which a stake emerges. Around it is attached a bag of animal skin whose head and hind legs have been cut off. The forelegs are attached to the stake. The end of the skin is extended into a kind of corkscrew ending with an open lotus flower. I have found several different interpretations as to the meaning and use of this object, but all agree that it symbolizes the mysteries of gestation. Let's now turn to the east wall. In the centrum is the solar boat, which sails from north to south. It is greeted by two cynocephali, most certainly baboons. The baboons' loud cries of territorial affirmation at the dawn have been equated to greetings by the Egyptians. The swallow perched on the boat is a symbol of regeneration, a messenger and companion to the sun during its journey. A falcon-headed solar god sitting in the center of the boat with a huge disc on top. It is named in the text Ra Hoaki Atum, Lord of the Two Lands of Heliopolis, Keperhe. Thus are associated the different phases of the solar life: Kepri, the rising sun; Ra, the sun at its zenith; and Atum, the setting sun. Before him we see a strange sign. It is the Shem sign, which represents the following of Horus, that is to say, the blessed dead, of which Sennedjem obviously wishes to be part. We are now in front of the best-known painting from Sennedjem's tomb, the Fields of Ayalu, meaning Fields of the Afterworld, which illustrate chapter 110 of the Book of the Dead, whose original name was Speech to Come Out into the Day, or Speech to Come Out into the Light. This is the meaning of the painting, the equivalent of paradise in ancient Egypt. The world is both underground, earthly, and heavenly. After passing all the trials of death, each deceased will lead a peaceful existence as on earth. This is the domain of Osiris, protected by Anubis. You can see fields as far as the eye can see, which will give excellent harvests. Upon arrival, the deceased is entitled to a personal estate that he must exploit and receive payment in kind. But the dead have no desire to spend eternity working. Here, Sennedjem is represented in different agricultural activities to mark magically his property vis-à-vis the gods and other deceased. But really working is another thing. To avoid this annoyance, the deceased put in their vault funeral servants called Shapti. Their role is to perform all the work that is to be done in the world of the dead as a chore. This is from chapter 6 of the Book of the Dead, and it's often written on the figurines. The upper register shows on the left Sennedjem and Iniferti kneeling. They recite a prayer of praise before 5 gods crouched on a mat sign. Then comes a scene whose meaning remains obscure. A son of Sennedjem, Rahobtep, sails south in a small boat, but the oar he is supposed to use is not shown. Another son of Sennedjem, Khonsu, practices the rite of opening the mouth of his father's coffin with 2 adzes. This ritual has an important place in the ceremonial mortuary of the ancient Egyptians. By magic, he gives back speech, hearing, smell, and sight to the deceased, who will then be able to complete his dangerous journey before entering the kingdom of the dead. There he will continue to breathe, eat, hear, and see. The small rectangle on the right has the name and title of Sennedjem on one side, and 3 ovals representing 3 regions of the underground world on the other. Turn around to look at the west wall now. In the center, a white pedestal on which is placed a canopic vase, or a nemset vase, surrounded by 2 interlaced lotus. Above, another vase surmounted by 3 wavy lines representing the Noon, the primordial ocean from which the world emerged. Higher, the hieroglyphic Shen, the rope tied to form an uninterrupted circle, symbol of completeness, infinity, and protection. 2 Ujat eyes, with the line below missing, frame it. This complex and highly symbolic rebirth is surrounded and protected by 2 Kemites. They are seated on the roof of a flat construction which corresponds to the entrance of the funeral chapel of the deceased, and more generally to the entrance of the underworld. Below, the couple Sennedjem and Ntr step forward to pay tribute to the gods of the Duat, who sit in a chapel. The chapel is a large building surmounted by a frieze of spitting cobras whose heads are topped with a solar disk. The gods are all seated on a Maat sign and look to the south. Apart from Osiris and Ra-Horakhti, the deities are anonymous. The two registers are separated by 3 lines of text taken from chapter 190 of the Book of the Dead. The ceiling is curved like a Numian coffin cover or a celestial vault. The 8 boxes all show Sennedjem's participation in his afterlife, and particularly in his solar life. They are inseparable from the 2 centrings of the east and west walls, and read from east to west following the solar path. The longitudinal bands bear traditional offerings. The cross bands bear names of deities. The scene of the first box is taken from chapter 109 of the Book of the Dead. The new sun is reborn on the horizon in the form of a small calf. On its back it carries Sennedjem, who participates in the rebirth of the sun. He is regenerated as shown by its green colour. A large red sun announces the sun at its zenith, symbolised by the presence of Ra-Horakhti Atum. Here, Sennedjem pays homage to 3 deities seated on a Maat sign. Horus is followed by 2 of his 4 sons, Amsit and Hapi. The text is addressed to all gods of truth. The serpent, Apophis, will try to stop the passage of the boat of Ra. Above the serpent is an anonymous god of the underworld. Sennedjem pays homage to the 2 deities, but his text is addressed to all gods of the Duat. We are now almost in the west. Sennedjem pays homage to 3 seated gods. Tot, the god of unlimited knowledge, Sia, the god of perception, who accompanies Ra in his boat, and Atum, the great creator. The text is a praise to Tot. Sennedjem and Ntr have just entered the underworld. In festive costume, they drink the water that is poured by the goddess Nut. She grows out of a sycamore tree, proof of the presence of water in the soil, and which gives shade and figs. This abundance of benefits is symbolized by the tray held by the goddess. The 2 spouses greet a group of 5 genii. Their faces are of varying hues like their shrouds to avoid monotony. Above them, 7 yellow stars. Their number and arrangement are absolutely arbitrary and do not intend to represent a known constellation. Sennedjem addresses all the gods of heaven, meaning all the chosen ones equated with the stars in this celestial court of the sun. Ra-Horakhti Atum is standing on his boat sailing west to east on the underground Nile. Before Ra stands the bird Bennu, a demoiselle crane with colourful plumage wearing the Atef crown, symbol of paternity of all gods. Behind Ra is a row of 5 men whose legend says the gods of the great Ennead are in the boat. Contrary to appearances, Sennedjem is not in front of a double wall door, but in front of two different doors corresponding to the two horizons, the one of the earthly world and that of the divine world. Sennedjem will leave the earthly world and enter the Duat, the underworld. Then he will open the second door that gives access to the heavenly world, the world of the gods, of which he will be associated. He will thus access eternal life. And is it not a little of his wish that we are interested in him more than 3,000 years after his death?
So, what do you think? I'm personally quite impressed with the video. We were suspect about some of the interpretations. But that's why it's important for us to be able to read this Mdw Ntr. Let's see, there was a couple that I did pull up earlier. This one. All right, let's see if I can make this larger. I can't really make it that much larger. But on this particular image, it's kind of hard to see. What I'm going to have to do now is go back and take some of these images and do translations of the Mdw Ntr. Because actually, again, I could find the name of this man, this noble he's identified as, in the text. I could find the name of the female behind him, who was accompanying him, which I find very fascinating, because I don't know if she had to travel with him to the afterlife, because, well, I don't know. I'm not sure how that works. I guess I don't know how that works. But reading the text would be helpful. It will take some time, but again, I cannot thank this this videographer enough, because it's not easy to get into these tombs, and clearly you can see him and his probably grandson or whatever has the ability to travel and get into these tombs that not most of us can get into. But that's really all I wanted to present today. That was a good 48 minutes. I am available for any questions for the next couple of minutes. I think if you're on YouTube, you can type into the comments. I mean, at least I can type into them. So if you want to type something in, I will respond. I will give you a few minutes to do that. But this is not my video, clearly, but I had to share that because it just provides such a wealth of information that we need to be able to see, and so I'm willing to share someone else's video just to point that out. Okay. Any questions, comments? If not, I will bid everybody a good evening. And you can look for me on my next video. You could always still send email comments to me. Let's see, do I still have my email address? Yes. So again, If you have comments that you specifically want to send to my email, you can email me at iamallafrican@gmail.com, and I will respond to you there. Or you could comment on the video itself or on any of the other videos that I've done. All right. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time. Shem Hotep.